Imagine standing beneath the towering ziggurats of ancient Sumer and Babylon, their stepped walls reaching for the heavens as the dusty sun sinks low. Here, amid the shadows of these sacred mountains of mudbrick, lived a class of people who wielded extraordinary power not through armies or kingship, but through rituals, prophecies, and divine authority. Priests, the unseen rulers of the oldest cities on earth, controlled what the people ate, what the gods said, and even what fate might hold. But what was it really like to be one of these priests? Was their life one of serene spirituality and divine favor? Or was it an exhausting, rigid existence, marked by fear, endless rules, and divine punishments? Today, we step back into those ancient streets, temples, and dusty archives to uncover the hidden truth behind the sacred life of Mesopotamian priests, and explore the rise and fall of empires, the secrets lost to fire, and the mysterious ziggurats themselves. So, sit back, relax, and let's journey together to the dawn of civilization. To a world where gods and men were tangled in a strange and compelling dance of power, faith, and survival. What it was really like to be a priest in ancient Mesopotamia. If you imagine a priest in ancient Mesopotamia, you might picture a serene figure in flowing robes, calmly offering prayers to the gods. The reality, it was far more complex and exhausting. First, these priests weren't just spiritual leaders. They were the linchpins of the entire society's survival. Mesopotamia, meaning between rivers, was the land of the Tigris and Euphrates, where irrigation and agriculture were the lifeblood of the cities. The priests were the keepers of this delicate balance. They controlled the food supply, literally deciding when to plant and harvest, and how to allocate the vital barley stores that fed everyone from farmers to soldiers. One of their most critical duties was tending to the god statues themselves. Each city had patron gods, whose images were housed in grand temples, often inside the massive ziggurats, those famous stepped towers. These statues were treated like living beings. They were fed, bathed, clothed, and given offerings daily. If the god statue was hungry or angry, it was believed the city might face drought, famine, or war. So priests performed endless rituals to keep the gods appeased. But it wasn't just feeding statues and sprinkling incense. Priests had to master complex rituals, each with a precise formula. Mistakes could mean disaster. They read omens by examining the livers of sacrificial shipper practice, known as extispicy. Every bump, scar, or shape in the liver could reveal the god's will. Imagine the pressure of interpreting these tiny clues correctly, knowing that your reading might decide whether a king went to war or made peace. The rules governing priests were strict and detailed, recorded in thousands of clay tablets. They couldn't eat certain foods, had to bathe multiple times a day, and were forbidden from touching anything unclean. Their lives were monitored closely by other priests, and divine punishment for failure was a real fear. Ancient texts tell of priests struck down by curses or disasters after neglecting their duties. Despite the divine facade, many priests led physically demanding lives, carrying heavy offerings, cleaning the temple, overseeing construction, and administering grain rations were all part of their daily grind. Their days started before sunrise and ended long after sunset. One particularly striking story from the city of Uruk describes a priest who, after a ritual mistake, was said to have been haunted by visions and terrifying dreams. He confessed in a tablet to trembling in the presence of the gods, feeling the weight of their judgment. This blend of divine authority and mortal anxiety defined the priesthood in Mesopotamia's sacred, exhausting tightrope walk. The curse of Akkad, Sargon's rise, and the wrath of the gods moving from the temple walls to the wider world. We arrive at one of the most dramatic chapters in Mesopotamian history, the rise and fall of the Akkadian Empire. Sargon of Akkad, often called the world's first emperor, rose from humble beginnings to unite the Sumerian city-states under a single rule around 2300 BCE. His story reads almost like legend, a cupbearer turned conqueror, who forged the first empire through military genius and cunning diplomacy. But alongside Sargon's glory, Mesopotamian priests played a key role. The empire's success wasn't just about armies. It was about winning the favor of the gods. Sargon was said to have been chosen by the goddess Ishtar herself, a divine endorsement that priests broadcast to legitimize his reign. The temple bureaucracy ensured the people believed the empire's expansion was the will of the heavens. Yet, the empire's collapse some 150 years later is shrouded in mystery and a cloud of divine curses. Ancient texts speak of the curse of Akkad, a poetic and chilling account of how the gods withdrew their favor, bringing famine, invasion, and chaos. Priests blamed human hubris, emperors and nobles forgetting the gods, neglecting rituals, or abusing power. One tablet tells a story of drought so severe that the rivers dried, crops failed, and the people starved. The priests interpreted this as punishment for sacrilege. Invading tribes swept in, destroying cities and burning temples. The sacred centers that once thrived became desolate ruins. The curse is a fascinating glimpse into how the priests understood history, not just as human events, but as divine judgment. This worldview shaped Mesopotamian culture for centuries, influencing kings and priests alike. But was the fall really a curse? Modern archaeology suggests a combination of environmental changes, economic strain, and political upheaval. Yet the myth of the divine curse endured, showing how priests maintained their power by interpreting disaster as a call for renewed devotion and obedience. The burning libraries of Babylon, as empires rose and fell, one place stood out for its dedication to knowledge and divine wisdom. Babylon, famous for its hanging gardens and the mighty code of Hammurabi. Babylon was also home to vast libraries filled with clay tablets inscribed with cuneiform script. These archives preserved myths, laws, astronomical observations, and medical texts, centuries of accumulated human knowledge. But this treasure trove wasn't safe from destruction. Babylon's history was turbulent, marked by repeated conquests and fires. Each time the city fell, priceless libraries burned or were looted, and tablets cracked or vanished into the sands of time. We can only imagine the lost secrets, scrolls of forgotten myths, ancient prayers, and perhaps even early scientific discoveries that might have changed history. One tragic event, recorded by later historians, is the burning of the royal library during the sack of Babylon by the Hittites. Around 1595 BCE, tablets melted in the heat, their contents forever lost. Yet some survived, buried deep in temple archives or copied and recopied by dedicated scribes, many of whom were priests themselves. These surviving tablets offer a haunting echo of the ancient world's vast knowledge and its fragile nature. Priests, as scribes and scholars, were custodians of this legacy, blending religious devotion with intellectual pursuit. Today, modern scholars continue to piece together fragments, slowly bringing back to life stories of gods and kings, rituals and daily life, reminders of a civilization both brilliant and vulnerable. Inside a ziggurat, sacred towers or tax centers. What were ziggurats really for? Those immense stepped towers, often crowned with temples, have fascinated travelers and historians for centuries. Were they simply sacred spaces reaching for the heavens? Or was there more? The answer lies in the complex role of the priestly elite in Mesopotamian society. Ziggurats were indeed centers of worship, but they were also administrative hubs, blending religion and bureaucracy in a way that seems strange to modern eyes. The priests didn't just perform rituals, they managed vast economic resources. Temples owned land, herds, workshops, and controlled trade routes. The priests kept detailed records of grain stocks, livestock, and laborers, acting as the ancient world's accountants and tax collectors. Inside a ziggurat complex, scribes copied tablets recording everything from temple income to labor assignments. These records ensured the smooth operation of the city and the distribution of goods. The priesthood's power extended beyond the spiritual. They wielded real political influence. They advised kings, mediated disputes, and sometimes even shaped policy. Some historians suggest that the ziggurats functioned as both sacred spaces and government offices, blurring the line between divine authority and earthly power. Imagine walking through the labyrinthine courtyards, hearing the scratching of styluses on clay tablets, the chanting of priests, and the clatter of workers delivering tribute. These towers were alive with activity, a blend of holy devotion and human enterprise. So, what can we learn from the priests of ancient Mesopotamia? Their lives were a balancing act between gods and mortals, ritual and politics, belief and bureaucracy. They carried the weight of civilization on their shoulders, in the scorching heat and dusty winds of the oldest cities on earth. Their stories reveal a world where faith was inseparable from power, where divine favor could make or break empires, and where knowledge was both sacred and vulnerable. From the exhausting daily duties of feeding god statues, to the epic rise and fall of Akkad, to the burning libraries of Babylon, and the bustling ziggurat complexes, this ancient world was far richer and stranger than we often imagine. If you've enjoyed this journey into Mesopotamia's sacred shadows, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more stories from the dawn of civilization, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What surprised you most about the lives of these ancient priests? Or is there another ancient mystery you'd like to explore? Thank you for listening and traveling back in time with me. Until next time, may your own days be filled with wonder and calm.